I knew something was wrong before I even turned into my driveway. Not because somebody called me. Not because I got a letter. Not because there were warning signs. It was the gate. A giant black iron gate standing where absolutely no gate had ever existed in the 16 years I'd lived there. I remember slowing my truck down and just staring through the windshield. For a second, I honestly thought I had taken the wrong road. That's how strange it looked. The old gravel entrance I had repaired every spring was gone. In its place sat stone pillars, decorative lanterns, fresh asphalt, and a wooden sign hanging between the gates that read, Silver Creek Manor Private Event Venue. I actually backed my truck up 20 feet and looked around. Same mailbox. Same cedar trees. Same creek crossing. My property. My driveway. Yet somehow it looked like the entrance to a luxury resort. I sat there with my hands on the steering wheel wondering if I'd lost my mind. Then a woman in a navy blazer walked toward me carrying a clipboard. Perfect hair. Perfect smile. The kind of smile people wear when they think they're in charge. She stopped beside my window. Good afternoon, sir. Are you here for a venue tour? I blinked. No. Her smile hesitated. I live here. That smile disappeared for maybe half a second before coming right back. Oh, you must be Mr. Walker. I hated the way she said it. Like she already knew exactly who I was. Yeah, I said. And you better explain why there's a gate on my driveway. The corporate voice arrived instantly. This access road is now managed by Silver Creek Hospitality Group as part of our recent property acquisition. I just stared at her. My what? She handed me a packet through the window. Our records indicate roadway access rights were transferred during the sale of the neighboring property. The neighboring property. That would be the old Harper farm. 40 acres sitting next to mine. Mrs. Evelyn Harper had owned it for decades. Sweetest woman you'd ever meet. Fed birds every morning. Sent Christmas cards to half the county. 6 months earlier, she'd sold the land and moved closer to her daughter in Tennessee. Apparently, some development company bought it. Apparently, nobody thought to tell me they planned to build a wedding venue. The woman kept talking. We've invested significantly into improving the property and creating an enhanced guest experience. I wasn't listening anymore, because one sentence in the paperwork had caught my eye. Resident access authorization required. I looked back at her. What exactly does that mean? Oh, that's simple. Residents may apply for a keypad code. Apply for a keypad code to enter my own property. For a second, I thought she was joking. She wasn't. I laughed anyway. Not because it was funny, because sometimes your brain can't process something that ridiculous. So let me get this straight, I said. You're telling me I need permission to use my own driveway? Weekday access is available between 8 and 5. I felt my stomach drop. And weekends? She gave me a polite little shrug. Weekends are reserved for events. I don't remember exactly what she said after that. Mostly because there was a ringing sound in my ears. Beyond the gate, I could already see workers hanging string lights. Catering trucks. Landscapers. People unloading flower arrangements where deer used to walk through every evening. My driveway had become part of somebody else's business. And nobody had even asked. Nobody called. Nobody knocked on my door. Nobody bothered to tell me. I folded the paperwork, shoved it into my jacket pocket, and asked one question. Where's Evelyn Harper? The woman cleared her throat. Mrs. Harper is no longer associated with the property. Clearly. Then I drove away before I said something I'd regret. There was an old trail through the woods behind my creek. Years earlier, I'd used it during hunting season. It was rough, muddy, and barely wide enough for my truck. That afternoon, it became the only way I could reach my own home. And with every branch scraping against my doors, every muddy rut beneath my tires, something inside me got a little angrier. Not explosive anger. Not shouting anger. The dangerous kind. The quiet kind. The kind that sits in your chest and waits. That night, I pulled every property document I owned out of a storage box in my closet. 2 hours later, sitting alone at my kitchen table under a single light, I found something that made me immediately pick up my phone. Because if I was reading the paperwork correctly, Silver Creek Manor had just made a very expensive mistake. And by sunrise the next morning, I was sitting across from the one person in this county who knew exactly how expensive that mistake was about to become. The next morning, I drove into town before sunrise and met with a property attorney named Rachel Bennett. Now, Rachel wasn't the kind of lawyer you saw in television commercials. She didn't have billboards. She didn't wear flashy suits. She didn't make dramatic promises. What she did have was a reputation. Around our county, when somebody hired Rachel Bennett, It usually meant somebody else had made a mistake they were about to regret. I handed her the paperwork and explained everything. The gate, the keypad, the wedding venue, the fact that I apparently needed permission to enter my own property. She listened quietly while flipping through my documents. Then she stopped on one page. Read it again, and smiled. Not a happy smile. The kind of smile a shark might make before dinner. Well, she said. That's interesting. I leaned forward. What? She slid the document toward me. Silver Creek doesn't own your road. I blinked. That's what I thought. No, she said. It's actually worse than that. Turns out Evelyn Harper had never owned the road itself. Decades earlier, when the properties were divided, her land had been granted a residential easement across my parcel. In plain English, she could use the road to access her home. Nothing more. No businesses. No commercial traffic. No events. No development. Just residential access. Rachel kept reading. Then she laughed. Actually laughed. Oh, this is beautiful. What? They converted the property into a commercial event venue. Yeah. The second they did that, the easement became invalid. I sat there staring at her. You're serious? Completely. The room suddenly felt very quiet. Outside her office window, people were walking down Main Street carrying coffee and newspapers, completely unaware that somewhere a company had probably spent millions of dollars building a business on top of a legal disaster. Rachel pointed to the language in the deed. There isn't even room for interpretation. They lost their access rights the moment they began commercial operations. I leaned back in my chair. For the first time since seeing that gate, I felt something other than anger. Relief. Because I wasn't crazy. I wasn't being unreasonable. I wasn't the problem. They were. And they had absolutely no idea. Rachel drafted a formal notice that afternoon. Termination of easement. Unauthorized commercial use. Trespassing. Removal of structures. 72 hours. Simple. Direct. Merciless. By Friday morning, copies had been delivered to Silver Creek's management office, and another copy had been taped directly onto their brand new gate. Then we waited. And nothing happened. Workers kept landscaping. Florists kept unloading decorations. Contractors kept hanging lights. It was almost impressive. Like watching people continue decorating a ship after somebody told them it had already hit the iceberg. Around noon, a black luxury SUV rolled into my driveway. Out stepped a man who looked exactly like the kind of attorney rich corporations hire when they think they can intimidate people. Expensive suit. Silver hair. Perfect watch. Perfect smile. The smile disappeared the moment he realized I wasn't impressed. Mr. Walker? Depends who's asking. He forced a chuckle. Michael Crane. Counsel for Silver Creek Hospitality. I nodded. You're here about the gate. We believe there's been a misunderstanding. I laughed. That seemed to annoy him. He handed me a business card. We purchased access rights through the previous owner. No, I said. You purchased paperwork from someone who didn't own the road. His jaw tightened. For the first time, his confidence cracked. Just a little. We have a major event scheduled tomorrow evening. I know. High-profile clients. I nodded again. I know that too. He took a breath. We'd appreciate your cooperation while this matter is resolved. Funny how quickly people discover the value of cooperation when they need something. 2 days earlier, their staff had told me to apply for permission to enter my own home. Now they wanted favors. I wasn't feeling generous. What exactly are you offering? His eyes lit up. He thought I was negotiating. Big mistake. We're prepared to discuss compensation. Yesterday, your company told me when I was allowed to use my own driveway. His smile vanished completely. We acted under the assumption we had legal authority. And whose fault is that? The silence stretched. Birds chirped somewhere behind my barn. A dog barked in the distance. For a moment, neither of us said anything. Then he lowered his voice. Dragging this through court could become expensive. There it was. The threat, wrapped inside polite language. I looked at him and smiled. You should probably tell your clients to read Rachel's notice again. His face hardened. The meeting was over. By the time he climbed back into his SUV, I could tell exactly what they were thinking. They believed I'd fold. They believed I'd blink first. They believed they could push through the weekend and deal with the consequences later. The problem was, I had already decided I wasn't moving. Saturday morning arrived with perfect weather. Bright blue sky. 72 degrees. Not a cloud anywhere. Exactly the kind of day wedding planners dream about. And exactly the kind of day that was about to become a nightmare. From my porch, I watched luxury SUVs begin arriving shortly after noon. Vendors, photographers, caterers, event staff. By 3 o'clock, guests started showing up. Men in tailored suits, women in expensive dresses. Every single one driving directly across land that legally belonged to me. I stood there holding a glass of iced tea, watching the line of vehicles grow longer, watching workers scramble around the venue, watching thousands of dollars move through a road nobody had permission to use. Then my phone rang. Rachel. No response, she said. I already knew what that meant. They weren't taking us seriously. Not yet. Are you ready? She asked. I looked toward the venue, toward the giant reception tent, toward the string lights, toward the hundreds of guests who had absolutely no idea what was coming. Then I glanced at my old pickup truck sitting beside the barn. The same truck I'd owned for nearly 15 years. The same truck that had hauled lumber, feed, fencing supplies, and more headaches than I could count. A slow smile spread across my face. Yeah, I said. I think it's time. And about 30 minutes later, with the ceremony less than 2 hours away, I started that old engine and headed toward the entrance, completely unaware that within the next hour an entire luxury wedding would grind to a stop because of one very simple fact. The road had always belonged to me. By the time I reached the entrance, the venue looked like something straight out of a wedding magazine. String lights hung from oak trees. White tents stretched across the lawn. Valets were running around in matching uniforms. Music drifted through the air. Everything looked perfect, which made what happened next even better. I drove my truck right through the open gate. Nice and slow. Nobody paid much attention at first. I wasn't a guest. I wasn't a vendor. I was just some guy in an old pickup. Then I pulled into the exact center of the entrance road, turned the wheel sideways, put the truck in park, shut off the engine, and dropped the keys into my pocket. Done. For about 5 seconds, nothing happened. Then panic spread like gasoline finding a spark. A young attendant came sprinting toward me. Sir, you can't park there. I looked around. Looks like I just did. His face went pale. This road needs to stay open. No kidding. He grabbed his radio. Within minutes, more people started arriving. First came the event coordinator. She looked exhausted before she even reached me. Headset, designer blazer, clipboard pressed against her chest like a life raft. You need to move that truck right now. No, you can't block guest access. I pointed at the road beneath us. My property. She froze. Actually froze. Like her brain suddenly stopped processing information. Then she started yelling into her headset. Everything unraveled from there. Cars began backing up. Guests started getting out to see what was happening. Valets argued with vendors. A florist stood holding a giant arrangement of white roses, staring at the growing traffic jam like she wanted to cry. Then came the limousine. Long white. Expensive. The kind of limousine that announces itself before anyone steps out. The vehicle rolled forward 20 feet and stopped. The driver couldn't go anywhere. The door opened, and out stepped the bride. Now look, I genuinely felt bad for her. I did. She wasn't the one who built a business on somebody else's property, but she also happened to be standing at the center of a disaster that wasn't my fault. She looked from my truck to the line of vehicles, and then straight at me. What is happening? The planner rushed over and started whispering. The bride's expression changed instantly. First confusion, then disbelief, then pure fury. You've got to be kidding me. No, ma'am. My ceremony starts in 90 minutes. I know. You can't do this. I shrugged. Tell Silver Creek to call my attorney. That didn't go over particularly well. Within 15 minutes, the entire venue looked like a reality show. Phones ringing, guests wandering around, people arguing, employees running in circles. One caterer sat on a cooler with his head in his hands. The photographer, meanwhile, appeared to be having the greatest day of his professional life. He was taking pictures of everything, every argument, every reaction, every moment of chaos. Then Michael Crane arrived. Same suit, same attorney, no smile. This time he was sweating. He marched toward me. Move the truck. No, this has gone far enough. You had 3 days. We're prepared to discuss compensation. You should have discussed it earlier. His voice dropped. What do you want? Not here. He stared at me. The planner was crying. The bride was pacing. Guests were recording everything with their phones. And every minute that passed was costing Silver Creek a fortune. Then a sheriff's cruiser rolled up. Right on schedule. Deputy Harris stepped out. Good guy. Known him for years. Michael practically ran to him. This man is obstructing access. The deputy accepted the paperwork. Read it. Then he accepted my paperwork. Read that too. The silence that followed felt enormous. Finally, he handed Michael's documents back and said 5 words that changed everything. He owns the road. That's it. 5 words. The planner looked like she might faint. The bride covered her face. Several guests immediately started whispering. Michael stood there completely speechless. The deputy shrugged. He can park wherever he wants. I've never seen an attorney age 10 years and 10 seconds before. But that's exactly what happened. A few minutes later, Michael's phone rang. He answered, listened, turned pale, then walked back toward me. This time, all the confidence was gone. What are your terms? Now we were finally having the right conversation. I called Rachel. She already knew what was happening. Apparently, Silver Creek CEO was on her other line, sounding extremely motivated to solve the problem. So I gave her my conditions. Every unauthorized structure built on my land had to be removed. The gate, the booth, the landscaping, all of it. Silver Creek would pay for every legal expense. A new commercial easement would be negotiated properly. And if they ever interfered with my access again, I'd have the right to terminate the agreement. Rachel listened, then said one word. Perfect. 5 minutes later, she called back. He agreed. Just like that. No argument. No negotiation. No corporate speeches. Because by then they had finally realized something important. When you're losing thousands of dollars every minute, pride becomes very expensive. I started the truck, pulled aside, and suddenly the entire venue exploded back to life. Cars rushed forward. Guests scrambled toward the ceremony. Golf carts flew across the property. Employees started shouting directions. The bride's limousine raced past me like it was escaping a natural disaster. The wedding eventually happened. About 90 minutes late. From my porch that evening, I could hear the music drifting across the fields. I could hear applause when they exchanged vows. And honestly, I felt peaceful. Not victorious. Not angry. Just peaceful. Because my home was mine again. The following week, workers removed the gate. The booth disappeared. The decorative landscaping was dug out. The road was restored. A few days later, Michael personally delivered the signed agreement along with a cashier's check worth more money than I'd ever seen sitting in one envelope. Before leaving, he paused on my porch. You know, he said quietly, we really believed we had the rights. For the first time all week, I actually believed him. Because sometimes people with enough money stop asking questions. They assume paperwork means ownership. They assume confidence means authority. They assume nobody will challenge them. I looked at the empty roadside where their gate used to stand. Then back at him. Next time, I said, read slower. That almost made him laugh. Silver Creek still operates today. They host weddings nearly every weekend. Every guest still uses that same road. The difference is simple. Nobody locks me out anymore. Nobody tells me when I can come home. And every month, right on schedule, a payment arrives. Now here's the question I've argued about with people ever since. Some folks think I went too far. They say I should have waited until after the wedding. They say the bride didn't deserve that kind of stress. Maybe they're right. Honestly, I did feel bad for her. But then I remember standing outside that gate, reading a sign that treated my own driveway like somebody else's property, and being told I could apply for permission to access my own home. And suddenly I don't feel quite as guilty. So tell me what you think. Did I go too far parking that truck there hours before the ceremony? Would you have waited until after the wedding? Or would you have done exactly the same thing? Drop your opinion in the comments, because I have a feeling this one is going to split people right down the middle. And if you've ever dealt with entitled neighbors, property disputes, or people who thought money gave them ownership of things that weren't theirs, make sure you subscribe. Trust me, this wasn't the last crazy land dispute our county ever saw.